One moment, I have them all here. Thank you, Council President. To Council, the President, ordinance number 675-2020, if passed by council, will authorize the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept the fiscal year 2020 COPS Hiring Program Grant. This grant will fund Operation Legend, formerly called Operation Relentless Pursuit. This legislation will enable the Department of Public Safety to participate in a program created by the Department of Justice that partners local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to create a task force to combat violent crime. Other partners include the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Bureau of Criminal Investigations, the FBI, CMHA, the Ohio Adult Parole Authority, and the Ohio State Highway Patrol. The grant will reimburse the city for the full salaries and benefits of 30 new police officers over 3 years. 30 seasoned officers will be transferred to the Operation Legend Task Force. Expenses to be reimbursed include $7,968,944 for police officers' salaries and benefits. That's the total for the grant. The grant period is from October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2023, and will be extended to cover the full 3 years once officers are hired. There's no local match, and this is a new grant.
I was on the committee hearing when this was discussed, so I don't have any questions. But this was heard and recommended for approval by the Committee on Safety. Chairman Mazzone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I shared on the committee last Thursday, I want to share a story why these types of initiatives are critically important. Cleveland police can't solve crime by themselves. Crime does not stop at a municipal border, doesn't stop at a ward border. And you have to work with regional partners, regional strategies, police jurisdictions to help solve crime. In May of this year, I had a horrific situation where 2 people were murdered within 15 minutes of one another. And an individual was pulled out of his car on West 80th in Detroit, carjacked, put face down, killed execution style. His name was Eric Hakizimana. He was a 17-year-old kid who came from Congo 2 years earlier to escape a war-torn country, only to come to a safe country to have his life senselessly taken from him. But for Operation Legend, we would not have solved that crime. So I am thankful for special initiatives like this. Several of our colleagues have received communications and emails from people who are concerned about an occupying force in our city. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow, I'd like to ask Chief Williams to speak about, because I've heard him speak on this matter. This is not an initiative like we all saw unfolded several months ago in the city of Portland, where people came in armorized vehicles and took over that street. This is way different. So if you would allow me, Mr. Chairman, I'd like Chief Williams to speak a little bit about the initiative.
Chief.
Yeah, Mr. Council President and the committee, as Councilman Zone stated, this is a investigatory assignment into the city of Cleveland by Detective Skirnovich was a part of Operation Legend while he was conducting activities on the west side last week. And this initiative, with the assistance of, again, our federal, state, county, local partners, is designed to combat violent crimes, specifically here in the city of Cleveland. And that's what it's doing. The significance of this grant, unlike COPS grants in the past, is that there is no match. Usually there is anywhere from a 1/3 or a quarter match for any funding given to hire officers on a COPS grant. We were able to lobby the COPS office and the Department of Justice, the cities involved in this initiative, to have no match, to make a bigger impact on the budgets of city governments that are participating in this program, to the good for that city. So the entire salary benefits packages for those 30 officers will be borne by the federal government for a 3-year period.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just my last comment, and then I'll turn it back over to you. I know that we're calling this initiative Operation Legend. I'd like us to maybe consider, Chief, maybe we call this Operation Skirnovitz. It would be a great way to honor that heroic police officer who's out there protecting and serving our city and keeping us safe. It's not something you necessarily have to respond to now, but we can't solve crime. We have seen and even received testimony from a U.S. Attorney, Justin Herdman, last Thursday, how violent crime is up not only nationally, but within the state of Ohio and in his footprint. He gave some very sobering statistics. There's a plethora of guns that are being poured out onto our streets. And there's reckless individuals who are just senselessly killing. They have no regard for their own life. We're not going to create safer communities for our families to live in unless we have initiatives like this. So I've been thinking a lot. I've been crying a lot thinking about this detective. And I ask my colleagues to support this piece of legislation.
Thank you very much, Councilman Zone. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I too am here to support the legislation, and I was there for the committee hearing for lengthy discussions, and I have met myself. I've met with U.S. Attorney and the U.S. Marshal, and I've sat down with both of them to discuss this program in great detail. As we've heard from the Safe Director, the Chief, and our Chairman of our Safety Committee, the violence that we're dealing with today, in my opinion, is unprecedented in the city of Cleveland. 2 weeks ago, when I spoke with a mom, I'm not going to mention her name, whose son got caught in the crossfire on East 149th Street, was there visiting a friend, shot in the head, and then left in the street to die like he was less than human. 34-year-old African-American male who was supposed to, a few moments later, was supposed to go pick up his girlfriend and take her to work. She wondered why he never came to get her. And listening to his mother, and then to see the other crimes across the city, the brutal killing of a Cleveland police detective. And what we're seeing is, and what we're all hearing is this is guns, it's drugs, it's turf, it's payback. It's been a perfect storm this year. As of this morning, my colleagues, we are up 27 homicides where we were this time last year. Think about that. 27 lives snuffed out due to violent crime in our city. I think it's also important that the administration, the Chief's Office, the Safe Director, continue to explain in detail what the purpose of the operation is, Mr. Chairman, because I too received emails, and I quite frankly believe that there are people who are trying to create some cloud or controversy over this by making this to be some kind, again, as the chairman indicated, some kind of paramilitary force that is here to, hit the streets in combat vehicles and combat outfits and suppress the rights. If I thought for one moment this program, this initiative, this grant was going to violate anyone's constitutional and civil rights or put combat troops on the streets, I would never support it, because I believe it'd be in violation of the Constitution. But this is to direct Cleveland police officers against the violence that we're seeing, the indiscriminate violence, innocent men, women, and children, elderly women sitting in their homes getting shot, people afraid to come out on their front porches, more and more women, single moms trying to purchase guns for self-defense, gun purchases, all-time record high, requests for carry concealed permits, all-time record high. This should tell us all that we've got a major problem in this city. And again, unfortunately, we are rated in the top 7 most violent cities, the city of Cleveland, and in the country. So I want to say to those people, those naysayers out there that think that we don't need this, or somehow, again, and I want to ask for the safety director and the chief to clarify this, somehow that they think we can take these monies and put them in the social service programs. I've indicated to them, the ones who've contacted me, called me, or written me, that these funds are specifically designed to go after the violent, the violent gun activity and violent gang and drug activity. Do you want to clarify that to the chief and the safety director?
Can you clarify what the councilman just stated?
No,
Yeah.
that's correct. The chief, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Council President to Councilman Polenzig, that's correct. This funding is to hire Cleveland police officers, period. And the reason for that is because the Cleveland Division of Police has dedicated officers and will dedicate, when this process is done, 30 police officers to the task force operations to combat violent crime. It's not a First Amendment type of, excuse me, enforcement or Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with the constitutionally protected constitutionally protected rights of individuals here in the city and around the city. It's strictly violent crime enforcement.
Okay.
So yes, confirm, Councilman.
Okay, and that, I think that's something we've got to continue to really drill down on, because there is this miscommunication out there, and our people, I think, that are trying to sow seeds of division, that somehow that there's ill intent here, which I don't believe there is for one moment. I would not be supporting. The last question I wanted some clarification on: the 30 officers, they're going to be redeployed, and then out of the most up-to-date class, explain the transition of the 30. We're going to assign 30, and then how do we backfill those slots?
Yeah, Mr. Council President, to the councilman, we are currently vetting a class for the 147th cadet class for the Division of Police. We started that process yesterday. Out of that class, we're going to designate 30 officers to be applied towards this grant funding. That class will graduate sometime next. It's about a 7-month process. So if we get them in, let's say by the end of November, that class will graduate sometime July, August of next year. Those officers will be on the street as it pertains to the grant funding. But I want to make one more point on this, and I think this kind of brings it all home. And Councilman Polenzig kind of hit the nail on the head. If you go and talk to residents that live in the city of Cleveland, that live in the neighborhoods where there's violent crime, and you ask them if they want more violent crime enforcement, be it from federal detectives and investigators, Cleveland police officers, state officers, county officers, if you ask them, do they want more or less violent crime enforcement? And I'm here to tell you, they'll say they want more crime enforcement here in the city of Cleveland. And that's what this grant is designed to do.
And Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleague, I totally concur with that. I mean, I'm getting those calls every day. They want more police on their streets. They want to see greater interaction, more community policing. They don't want to see less. They want to live in safety. They want to be able to walk down the street. They want to be able to go to the store. They want to be able, when I have a grandmother in Glenville tell me that she's afraid to let her grandkids come over for fear of what's going to happen to them. I can remember going to my grandmother's house in Glenville as a kid, never thought about being hurt or having anything happen to me. This is a collective issue. We got to join together, the council and administration and our citizens. And again, I say this, overwhelmingly, the people of the city of Cleveland, they want safe streets. They want these violent individuals dealt with and prosecuted to the fullest extent under the law and taken off our streets so we can live in peace and not have to be afraid to do business, to go to each other's homes, to interact with one another. So I support this grant wholeheartedly and 100%, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Joe Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. And also my colleague, Mike Polenzig, I mean, he just hit this out the ballpark as relates to the need for more police officers on the streets. And it has been an issue that I've championed from day one. And I certainly don't envy you, Chief Williams. You have a heck of a job to do trying to deal with the fleeting resources you have and trying to meet the need in the neighborhood of the city of Cleveland, which is, as my colleague said, for us to be ranked number 7 in the nation is major based on our population size. And my question would be, Mr. Chairman, to the director, this new class is the 147th cadet class. How many cadets are in the 147 class, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
That's the class that we're in the process of seating now. We don't have a number of cadets for that class. Now we're working on seating that. We're working on putting together who those members of that class will be.
So we don't have nothing organized yet.
You know, what we're doing is we are engaged in meetings when we are reviewing all of the applicants during the process, which we call 1 in 10s, and selecting the members for that class.
Okay, so do we know what that class size is going to be, Mr. President, to the director?
Chief, do you have an idea of what the approximate class size may be?
Yeah, through the council president to the councilman, we were budgeted for 50 officers for that 147 class. We hope to get approval from finance to add these 30 for a total of 80 officers for that class. The 50 we were previously budgeted, plus now the 30 that are going to be paid for by the cops hiring grant. But we have yet to get that official approval. We've kind of gotten a nod to go ahead and select the class. There are currently 128 folks in the process, as the director stated, that we are reviewing backgrounds, qualifications, all that kind of stuff for those 128 applicants. And out of that, my goal is to select anywhere from 60 to 80 for that upcoming 147 cadet class.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, like my colleague, I received some information concerning this particular legislation that we're talking about. And, the people who wrote me don't even live in the city of Cleveland. And what I will say to them, as my colleague has eloquently stated, the crime in my neighborhood is epic. I've never seen the kind of violence in my neighborhood in 20 some years. And, the only thing I can say is that the system is broken and it's broke. It's not working. I know that you have had violent crimes in your neighborhood, Mr. Zone. I've had assassinations in my neighborhood. I have drive-by shootings of senior citizens' homes. I've received a phone call over the weekend from one of our top clergy in the city concerning one of his members, and just the act of God. She wasn't in her bed when the bullet whizzed right straight where she would be sleeping at, and ended up in the bathtub. So we started seeing this phenomenon in 2018 where homes are just randomly being shot up in our neighborhood. And we still have the gun violence. We have the robberies. We have people who, in fact, every day I'm finding out someone is getting killed in my neighborhood. So, or their houses have been shot up. And I need help, Mr. Chairman, to Chief Williams. Can we get more help, more police officers? And I see that this is a first good start of 30 police officers, but this is not enough. And so why aren't we looking at 100? Washington, D.C. needs to take care of its American citizens. And this government that's in power now said, what do you have to lose? And so my thought, Mr. Chairman, to the director, why aren't we asking for 150 or 200 new police officers? This 30 new 30 officers that you got in this program, I believe it might make an impact, but I'm not so sure. And I don't have the confidence that 30 police officers are going to help them make a difference in the city of Cleveland. Can we ask for more, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Director, do you know the answer to that?
So as Chief Williams stated, that this, this is an unprecedented grant for the 30 new police officers that was engaged with the Department of Justice. I mean, right now it is what it is. We are constantly looking at our staffing levels, and we'll be reviewing those going into budget 2021.
Well, I got that, Mr. Chairman, to direct, and I don't try to be confrontational with you, but I'll remind you, going back 20 years ago when Mike White was the mayor of the city of Cleveland, and then Bill Clinton was elected into public office. He came here to this town, he snubbed this mayor, and this mayor kicked his ass, and he brought 100 new police officers down on the ground. Now, I got you on that, Mr. President.
Okay, Councilman, listen, Councilman, you're out of order. Please don't use that type of language in this. And I would remind everybody that we have a healthy agenda ahead of us.
I got you, Mr. Chairman, but I'm having people getting killed in my neighborhood and I don't have no help. And so what I asked the director, he didn't answer it. And what I'm asking him is that when you go to the table, you have to get as much as you possibly can. So why can't we get more police officers than this measly little 30 police officers they're giving us right here, right now? And I need 30 of them in my neighborhood alone, Mr. Chairman, to the director. I'm losing population in my community because of the violence and the crime. And I went downtown and had a meeting with a very distinguished gentleman about 3 weeks ago. And we sat down in the area of a grassy knoll. It was so nice, so beautiful, nice restaurants, people sitting down on the grass, enjoying themselves, having lunch. The point I'm trying to make, Mr. President, is that I don't have an environment, not one location in my neighborhood where I can do that. The violence and crime is so bad that, 30 police officers are good, but I need 100 police officers, and you can give me 30 and you can take the rest. So, okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna ask the question again. Mr. Chairman, if the director would be so kind, can we please get more police officers and the powers that be? Can we get more police officers in the city of Cleveland? No citizen should have to live in an environment in one of the richest countries on the planet where they feel like they're gonna get shot up in their house any second.
Chief or Director, can you answer the question, will we get more police officers for the councilman?
Well, not under this grant, but we will be looking to hire more police officers.
Can I understand that when you said we're going to be hiring them, you only got a certain budget? Are we going to hire over the 1,600? Are we going to get another 100 down on the ground, Mr. Chairman, to the director? Because I don't have the resources here to protect my citizens. I need help.
Let him answer the question. We've heard the question, Councilman. Just let's have a little bit less comment. Let's let him answer. And we need to circle back to the legislation that's in front of us. We all have neighborhood issues. We all want more police. We all want more safety. But let's stick to the legislation in front of us. Chief or Director, if you can answer the councilman's question, please.
Yeah, Mr. Council President, to the councilman. As the director stated, we're always looking for avenues to hire more officers, be it on the general fund budget or on the federal government or state budgets and grants that that are made available to us. I've said at the table on numerous occasions, I'd like to have 1,700 police officers in this division, but you have to get to and sustain that 1,600 number before you can get to that 1,700 number. So we've been in talks with the administration, with our folks on how we up our numbers. But right now, as Councilman Polensik points out, we have to sustain that 1,609, I'm sorry, before we can start to move forward. And we're in the process of shoring that up.
Thank you. Councilman, questions on 67520, please.
Mr. Chairman, looking at this, this Operation Pursuit and Relentless, are they looking at putting resources in the Lee Harvard Ward 1 area in terms of spot shotter?
Chief or Director?
Through the chair of the council, council president to the councilman, this does not involve shot spotter at all. No.
Councilman?
And Mr. Chairman, you have a number of agencies that are going to be involved with this. how many, I see here BCI as an acronym, who is they? I know the FBI is CMHA and Ohio Adult Parole, Ohio Highway Patrol. But what is BCI, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Director,
President to Councilman, it's Bureau of Criminal Investigations.
Councilman.
And Mr. Chairman, to the director, looking at these partners, are these partners going to join the 30 new police officers that are going to be a part of this task force? Are their numbers substantial that would increase this number, or is just going to be these 30 officers working in some kind of data gathering and getting assistance and direction from these different partners who are in this process?
These 30 off, the hiring of the new 30 officers would replace the experienced 30 officers that we put onto the Violent Crimes Task Force.
Well, I understand that. Is the U.S. the partners that include the U.S. Attorney's Office, BCI, FBI, CMHA, Ohio Adult Parole, and Ohio State Highway Patrol? Are they going to be adding to that? I mean, will they be having their officers as a part of our officers, maybe creating a total of 60 or 70 or 80 officers on the street assisting with this task force?
To Councilman through the President, this would be just outlining the collaboration of resources between all of these partners, like BCI's resources with DNA testing, forensics. CMHA would assign whatever officers they would assign to participate in the task force. Adult Parole Authority, which is a key partner, will help us use their resources with keeping track of violent offenders. Ohio State Highway Patrol would assign their resources. So this would be a collaboration of resources, but the 30 new police officers that we would be hiring would be hired into CPD.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, to the director, who do we get in contact?
If you could be as precise as possible.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to the director, who do we talk to when we have these trouble houses, these houses that are causing mischief, mayhem, and causing the bloodshed? Who do we talk to deal with these drug houses that we know are drug houses? Who do we talk to that's going to help us as council members as we pass off on this today?
Question, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Council President to the Councilman. Councilman, you know those complaints can be directed to your district commander or to the chief's office.
Councilman?
Mr. Chairman, do we have anybody here that will do this? Because I've turned them in and I'm not getting anywhere here with the police department. That's the reason why I told you it's broken.
Last question to Chief.
So do we have anybody here, Mr. President, that could help us? Because it's supposed to be Operation Relentless Pursuit or Operation Legend. So I want to see some legend and some pursuit in my neighborhood. So who do we talk to on this task force that could help us, Mr. President? That's all I'm asking.
Through the council president to the councilman again, those requests can be directed to the chief's office, and we have responded to your complaints, Councilman, several times.
We have 60 homes. We have one on East 143rd Street. So it's still up and rolling. I'm not sure if you've gotten onto that or not, but I went there just the other day just to check it out, and they're still in full swing.
Extremely interesting. We have to move, Councilman. Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. President. This is something that really needs a lot more conversation and public comment on. And, I'm going to be voting no on this. Once again, I think, Mr. President, that we know that we are living in a city that there is a lot of crime that's taking place. And as we know, when we talk about this subject, it's always one-sided. It's always one-sided. We always talk about the crime, but we don't talk about the crime that happens to community members. And as we're looking at the future of this city, we can't police our way out of this situation. We can't police our way out of the situation. I don't know what community members some of my colleagues are talking to, but there's a ton of community members who believe what I believe, and that is more police in itself is not going to change the situation. Mr. President, over the weekend, I talked about, I posted something just saying I want to send my love and gratitude to the officers who lost their lives. And then you had some people online who said, well, how dare you? How dare you even say anything nice about police officers? You talk about defunding. You always mess with our chief. You know, they had all these type of things. You know, Chief Williams, you really loved online, man. So the point is that we're looking at things in one way and not in both ways. I can fight to change a system that seems to harm Black and brown people more than anyone else, while at the same time being thankful to the officers who every day put their lives on the line. We live in a country where it's either Black or white, Republican or Democrat, this or that, this or that. And the fact is that we can do both. We can be both. And I truly believe that, you know, we're still, if we need help with, you know, we need help with, yes, some of the crime that's on the street, but we also need help in finding, you know, dealing with the fact that you have a Desmond Franklin who still, we still haven't seen any growth on that, or the hundreds of pictures that that's been sent to me of people who have been brutalized by the police with no regard here in our city. So why can't we do both? So I would have hoped that, I know that the consent decree is supposedly trying to do that for us, but we're seeing that this has not been achieved. So I want to openly say that this is something that I don't support. I'm voting no on it, but not because it's not important for us to deal with the crime, but understand that that it's also a crime that our community members feel as if that when injustices happen to them, that no justice comes for them. But when we talk about crime, oh yeah, there's too many murders, there's too many killings, and people are shooting. And you're right about that. And that's something that we have to fight, and that's something that we have to work on. But simultaneously, we also need to work on building a stronger bridge between community and police. And the way that we do that is that when our police officers do something that is wrong, do something that is harmful to the community, that there's justice there as well. It can't be just justice. It can't be just justice towards Black and brown people who commit crimes. It also has to be justice towards those who are committing crimes against Black and brown people. So my vote is no on that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm voting yes on this. And I just want to put this in context. We've been doing this for quite some time, but I want to make sure that we look at this in a comprehensive way. When we originally started this, just as much money went into prevention, and then you also had some money that went into reentry. One of the concerns that I have about this is that even though when we take out some of the top heads of some of these organizations with RICO charges, then there's going to be a void that's going to be filled. And then that's when we have a lot of issues that we're going to have that might follow up with those folks that try to, you know, get involved in those turf wars and other things like that. So my question to the safety director as well as to the chief, you know, how are you going to be working once you eradicate some of these folks off of the streets and get some of them off of the streets? How are you going to be working to try to prevent the next generation? Because it seems like they're getting younger and younger and younger from emerging into being, into just falling into this vicious cycle.
Well, if I could, Mr. Council President, to the councilman, you know, I'm a career law enforcement officer, been a police officer for almost 35 years. That's the majority of my life. And, you know, we on the law enforcement side understand the prevention aspect. We understand the reentry aspect, and we're all for it. We're all for supporting that. We're all for giving whatever needs to be given on our front to be a part of that. But the question needs to be to those agencies and organizations and folks out there that do that type of work as their normal course of business. One thing that we've done in law enforcement is we push law enforcement and public safety into arenas that we're not trained or qualified to deal with on a consistent basis. So you know me, Councilman, my push has always been those folks that it's their normal course of business, whether it be psychologists, sociologists, social workers, community activists, those people that it's their course of business to do prevention exercises, reentry exercises, and to have those systems set up for folks. We're more than willing to support those folks, but you can't push all that on law enforcement. I mean, our thing is crime prevention, crime detection, and, prosecution, assisting in prosecution of criminals. Yes, we're going to be engaged in the community. Yes, we're going to be with our community partners doing whatever needs to be done, but we need to push more on those agencies out there who, again, it's their primary function to do those things, to partner with us to make sure those things happen. And again, not even from the city perspective, from the nonprofit sector out there, from the private sector out there, people that are involved in those things need to kind of step up to the plate.
Well, Chief, let me, you remember the days when we actually had the three-legged stool, prevention, reentry, and law enforcement. At no time have I ever asked law enforcement to fill the void of prevention and reentry, but I do believe that they need to work hand in hand. And the conversation of the day, which I want to remind my colleagues, is why aren't we investing more into some of these social problems and trying to deal with education, trying to deal with prevention, trying to deal with the psychologists and other folks that you're talking about. I do want to remind us that I believe we put 5.3 million to try to make sure that our rec centers and other places are places where we're dealing with trauma and some of those other issues. So I want people to listen in public to understand that we are investing in some of those other areas, that even though this grant focuses on law enforcement, it comes from the federal government. There's nothing we could do about that. Would I wish that they would still fund, like they did under the Obama administration, prevention, reentry, and law enforcement? Yes, sure. However, the grant stipulates that it's going to go to law enforcement. That's the reason why we've invested other dollars into trauma, informed care, and other things like that. So just keep that in mind. The other question that I have, Mr. Chair, to the director and the chief, the use of force guidelines. It's my understanding that the federal use of force guidelines are a little bit more rigorous and a little bit more a higher proof level than the local or the police guidelines. Is that true? And if that is the case, then what guidelines will they be judged by for use of force incidents that the people that are part of the Operation Legend initiative?
Mr. Chair, to the councilman, I can answer that. It's the opposite, councilman. Our Division of Police use of force guidelines are probably about, in total, 5 different policies, probably about anywhere from 25 to 30 pages long. The federal guidelines for use of force are a lot smaller than that. And I won't get into specifics, but a lot smaller than that. And our officers, whether they are on task force or other operations around the city, are governed by the City of Cleveland Division of Police use of force policy, not any federal policies on use of force.
And that's good to know, because I think if I recall, ours is like 25 something, and most other municipalities might have about a 2 to 3 page use of force guidelines. So I just want people to know that there is a higher standard in Cleveland, and that this group will be operating under a higher standard. Intelligence-led policing. I'm very interested in how this group is going to really focus on intelligence-led policing. I know that there's been a network analysis done in the past to really identify the bad actors, to show the percentage of people that we're trying to go after. Are you guys going to do some of that to really try to make sure that we're pinpointing and going after the people that we need to go after? Or is this going to be a whack-a-mole that we just try to go after anybody that we see that fits the description of bad actors in the neighborhood?
Chief?
I think the chief is froze.
Okay, so this is going to be, it's definitely going to be the former. It's going to be the intelligence gathering. This is not going to be a whack-a-mole. This is going to be law enforcement using resources to gather intelligence in the community and surveillance and things of that nature. I don't want to get too much into the intelligence gathering here, but this will not be, you know, a random process. This will be a very intelligent, methodical, and deliberate process.
So where I'm going with this, safety director, and I believe the chief can respond as well if he's back, that this is going to be surgical. This is not going to be just go out and round people up. This is actually going after the bad actors that are repeat offenders, that are really the heads of the drug trade, that are really the heads of the group member involved cliques that we have. We're not just going out, just round up every kid that we see on the corner and everybody we see out in the street, right?
President, to the councilman, that is absolutely right. And I'm glad that you brought that up and hopefully that will quiet, the concerns of the citizens that this is going to be a surgical effort. I also wanted to add that, we are in a unique times. Everything that we do to make our community better has to be taken from a perspective of collaboration between our law enforcement and our community. We can't do this without that collaboration and cooperation. We have a common interest in making the city of Cleveland safer and enjoyable. That common interest that should be what unites us. It has to be what unites us. But to your point, it will be surgical, methodical. This is not a random grab all and see what we got.
Thank you.
All right, just as I close and round up, Mr. Chair, when we did studies in the past, when I wore a different jacket, we really boiled it down to about 8%, 6 to 8% of the folks in this city were responsible for a disproportionate amount, almost 70%, 68 to 70% of the violent crime in our community. I want people to recognize who we're trying to go after. We're trying to go after the ones with the guns. We're trying to go after the ones that are wreaking havoc on our community. This is intelligence-led policing to go after the top of the food chain. Of course, I agree with my colleague, Councilman Joe Jones, that we need some help going after some of the nuisance issues like house parties and speeding and some of those other issues like that. But we really need to do intelligence-led policing to really go after that. As I close, Mr. Chair, I hope probation is involved because they have a little bit more leverage than others. And I hope that many of the people that are pulling these guns are repeat offenders. So I hope the judges are involved, and I hope we could do court watches and other things to really make sure that we send that home. But I'm voting in support of this because right now we are in a crisis moment in our city. A lot of people say that, that there's denial at City Hall. There's not denial. There's, we recognize what we have to do. And this is one of the issues that we have to do. I do believe we need to be balanced. And we need to be make sure that we identify clearly who we're going after. But this is something that we need, that we have to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Phyllis Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the director and chief and other staff. Most of my questions have already been asked and answered, but I did want to just register my support for this ordinance, and I will be voting yes. And understanding that right now what we're facing in our communities, what I hear from people in my neighborhood, and not just my neighborhood, but I have friends and family that live throughout this community. And right now we have an issue that needs to be addressed, and that's the violent crime, the criminal enterprise and gang activity that are adversely affecting the quality of life for many people in our community. The number of young people being killed and the number of people, again, we got people, middle-aged and older who are being killed. A lot of it is random violence. And so we're in a situation now that we have to deal with it, this specific issue. And again, it doesn't mean, as a body, as individuals, we all deal with and work on multiple issues at one time. It doesn't mean that we don't support more social service, public health initiatives for our community, because I think people will see that we do that all the time as well. This particular grant is for a specific purpose, and it's a needed purpose. And so I again want to indicate that I am voting yes. The people that I haven't spoken to one person in my community that says, turn this down. We don't want this. I haven't gotten that. And many of the people that I've heard from, again, don't live in the city. They don't live with the gunshots at night. The robberies, the carjackings, the drug activity, I think any of us can go through a litany of things and crimes and situations and areas that are real problems for us, and drastically affect the community that people live in. So, I know there are other grants out there, for more law enforcement, policing opportunities. Like there are other grants out that are available for social services, reentry, prevention, for our young people in particular. So yeah, and again, we will deal with those things as they're in front of us, or many of us go out and look for those opportunities to support. Just one question, or one point I wanted to kind of emphasize that Councilman Griffin brought up, and I look at it over my years in council, and one of the first few months, maybe first year of my tenure, there was a big takedown of a large, drug and criminal enterprise, for lack of a better word, in my community. And while it was great, well, great's not the word, but it was necessary, but it left a void. And unfortunately, it left a void of leadership among a lot of other young men who did not have strong support systems and families, and intervention services. And so, as Councilman Griffin stated, we've seen over the years that the people who are committing the crimes are getting younger. And quite frankly, someone who's 15 or 16, is even more reckless than someone, who's 18 or 19 or in their early 20s. And so we really have to, as a part of this initiative, also be looking at, what are we putting in place? That has to be a critical component. And I know the funding doesn't come under this, but we just have to be aware, of the unintended consequences. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Council President, I sit back and I listen to these grants to go through, or we give them the authority. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. We give them the authority, and everyone says this is good, this is great, and we've been saying that forever. But when they leave the table, it should be some kind of way that the safety director comes back 6 months from now or whatever to tell us where he's at. I mean, you could pass a grant and you say it's great. That's crazy to say that. And we don't know, are we hitting our goals and objectives? That means a lot to me when I vote for these, to give people the authority to seek dollars or whatever the case may be. You should bring back to council some kind of evaluation telling us that if we gave you so much money, we gave you the authority. And I hear what my good friend, Councilmember Blaine Griffin is saying, but the outcome measures is very, very important to me. If we can cut back on crime, and you can do prevention with crime as well, but they bring it back to us. Then we know that if, because you have to manage grants, you have to manage them. Then we know where we're at. Because if there's a glitch, let's say the safety director is putting 30 officers, or the safety director is pushing this this project, but we don't even know where he's at if he doesn't come back to tell us. I don't want to pass things. I'm tired of passing things. I've been asking for almost 20 years an evaluation process, where are we at? And they need to bring it back, Mr. President. I'm going to support this, but they need to bring it back and show us where they're at. Are they hitting their milestones? Is Joe Jones' ward quieter? Is Councilman Conwell ward quieter? And were there any issues and concerns while they're pushing this grant. And they don't bring it back to us. And when they're at the table, they say, okay, yes, we'll bring it back to you, councilman. But you know what? I don't get it. They never bring it back. They come, they say yes, so they can get authority from council, Mr. President. That's not right and that's not fair. And we say it's good in this grant because the mission is good, but they don't give us the outcome measures. And that's what I have to say. And I'm tired of that. I'm really tired of it. It's disrespectful, really. It's disrespectful. And that's where I'm at. I support it, but I need to know where they're going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. And you've been more than consistent in asking for, the results that you want. So I would ask that that there be a report prepared when this money starts coming in and in real time, get it back to Councilman Conwell in terms of what it's being used for, what the results are, and make him understand that, his vote, mattered and counted.
And Mr. President, not just me, I bet you that the entire city council want to know the outcome measures. Because when you vote for something, you're wondering what is going on. Because we, Mr. President, we vote on a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things. And if they were to bring us back a report card, even my 6-year-old granddaughter have a report card. Brielle, she has a report card. And here we don't get that. So I mean, you do need to have the evaluations. And that means a lot. Then we can even write, you know what? You can write good policy, Mr. President, off a good evaluation.
Yeah,
Because
Councilman, you're allowed.
you know where you're going. And so then we can write better policy and then we know how to manage it. And then we can see, because sometimes policy changes. And then we can see which direction we need to go. But when they don't bring us back the evaluation, that's not a good thing. And that's all I get. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Much appreciated. Councilman Anthony Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few points before I go into my questioning. Councilman Conwell is correct that many times we support something, whether it's a grant or whether it's something through the budget, and we don't always hear back about the results, whether good, bad, or indifferent. But in this particular case, because of all the scrutiny, or because of the focus around this grant and Operation Relentless Relentless Pursuit, whatever we're calling this, I think it would be helpful to not only the administration, but to this body. Not helpful, but it is very much needed that we have some sort of communication back to us regarding what has occurred and what results or lack thereof as a result of us accepting this grant to hire these police officers. No doubt that I support anytime we are able to bring on more police officers who would do the right things in our neighborhood, okay? Because there's a difference. We can hire 150, 200, 300, 400 bodies, but if the officers that we bring in are not appropriate or correct for our communities, and what difference does it really make, right? We hear those sentiments from some of my colleagues about, having, as Councilman Griffin said, a balanced approach to this. Not only officers, but social services aspects, having the right fit for our communities. And I think sometimes that we get so far away from that because we just want bodies, where we don't really look at what's appropriate, what's correct for our communities, because every community is different. You can't stick a triangle peg in a circle hole. It don't work. You may think going in that it works, but oftentimes that it doesn't. So as it relates to this grant, I am in support of this because, as Councilman Polenzek stated, I can name some folks in Glenville, Collinwood, Euclid Park, Nottingham, St. Clair Superior, who have been victims many of these violent crimes in our neighborhoods. And I can tell you one thing for sure and two things for certain, that they absolutely will have my behind if something like this was not supported, because they experienced something that maybe some of us haven't, maybe some of the others who are writing in opposition have not, but they themselves have experienced being victimized for whatever reason, whatever situation. So nonetheless, that we have to be balanced in everything that we do. And so I'm understanding that unfortunately this grant does not allow for anything except for, Mr. Chairman and the Safety Director, for us to bring on the additional police officers that you all have indicated, correct? Just so I'm clear.
Director, if you can unmute.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time? You broke up. over
I
here.
just want to be certain that this grant, as you all have indicated, that this is only for us to accept a grant to be able to bring on a particular number of police officers, and that this grant does not allow for us in no way, if we wanted to not only bring on officers, be able to bring in some civilian individuals or groups to be able to help from the other side of community engagement other than policing.
Council President, to council, that's correct. This grant is solely to bring on 30 new police officers.
Okay, and thank you for the answer. I just wanted to be clear so that way, so that we're clear on what we're doing. And if there was some ability, somehow, some way that we can, sometimes these grants say, well, 60% has to be for this or 70% has to be for that. That this was not one of those type of grants that we do 90% on personnel as relates to police officers, and we can do 10% on social service or other ways of community engagement. But as you're telling me, that is not the case. And so, this body, we although we have been stellar, in my opinion, in providing community support from making our rec centers, wraparound centers for folks to go in and receive benefits from, or training the staff to be counselors, etc. I think that we have to continue we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to progress and move forward and continue to build on the work that we have already done, because as many of us know, that the issues don't stop. We bring on 15 counselors, we renovate 2 rec centers. Well, we can't stop there. We have to continue moving to effectively deal with and address these situations that we have. Mr. President, to the director, after we hire these 30 police officers, it is our intent to keep them on permanently, or is this for a specific period of time? Have we thought through that? Do we have the ability to keep these officers on, or can you clarify what our approach would be after these officers are brought on in terms of as it relates to the long term?
So, as you know, this funding for the 30 new police officers for a period of 3 years, and as Chief Williams stated, he would love to see 1,700 officers. So we bring these folks on. We plan to engage in discussion and looking at our budget and our manning so that we can not only keep these officers, but add to. So we do not anticipate that we will reduce forces at the end of this 3 years. We will look to grow our police department to bring. I agree with Chief Williams. I think 1,700 is a good number.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, I'll wrap up after this point. I understood the 3 years, but what I don't want to happen is that we bring these officers on for 3 years. We go out here, we make waves, and let's say we come out with some great results, and then after 3 years, then we're back here again, trying to figure out a way to help deal with these issues in our community, right? That we are again left holding the bag, so to speak, without any real plan or any real path to move forward to address these violent crimes that we have, because it's real. When myself and my colleagues sit around and talk about the issues that are plaguing our community, and when they think that when we say Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Johnson, that it's a game, it's not a game, it's real. That in a lot of these neighborhoods, it's the wild, wild west. We have a problem, a growing problem in these communities that we all together must work together to be able to grab a hold to. And if we don't, then we're going to continue to see the things happen that we see happening every single day. So again, Mr. Chairman, in closing, I'm in support of this grant here. But as we move forward, that this council takes a hard look of the funding levels that we have put forward as relates to the civilian side of community engagement and working with the police. As Chief Williams said, they're not trained to that level, or they don't have the manpower to be able to deal with the other side of policing, which we know that isn't the black and white car, that we look at our levels of funding and find ways to build upon those and as our efforts as we try to affect the aggressively affect the things that are affecting our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Anthony Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of my questions have been answered. And I think, when I looked at the letter from the Department of Justice, it specified that we can hire 30 officers or use that money to rehire officers or use that money to retain officers. But it was answered that we are not doing the latter two, we're doing the first, which is to hire 30 new officers. And it also specifies that some officers can be redeployed. So I think we've gone over this at length, and my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Charles Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, thank you, Councilman Hairston. He answered one of my questions, which was about my question about, what happens when this funding source sunsets. I think Councilman Hairston also brought up an important point that for a lot of people, violent crime is pretty abstract. Can everyone hear me okay? I feel like I have the loudest register in the world behind me, air register. I'm not shy about this, but, for me, violent crime isn't abstract. I was robbed at gunpoint in 2015. It's an experience that I'd like to not go through again. And it's, an experience I probably didn't think that I'd go through in my life, but, here we are. And, I'm supportive of this legislation for a pretty important reason. I think it's important that we step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. Violent crime in Northeast Ohio, Greater Cleveland, isn't really that much different than the national average, but the city of Cleveland has an incredibly high violent crime rate. Why is that? My suspicion, my really strong belief is because we've seen this out-migration from the city of Cleveland. Our population has declined by about 500,000 people over the course of decades. And what we've left with, and I say this knowing that, and acknowledging that, crime in my part of town does not compare to crime in many other parts of the city. However, we're all in this together. And, people, when I talk to my residents, we're committed to Cleveland, we stayed. But it's frustrating over the course of one weekend in May to receive thousands of emails from people that don't live in Cleveland who, feel the need to comment on our public safety and, just quite defund your own police. But, it's don't write from Hudson and don't write from Edina. I won't name every community. It's just categorically frustrating. And what frustrates me about it is that this is a regional issue. The pulling of resources out of Cleveland, the disinvestment, the concentration of poverty, the underfunding of schools, all of these things are factors that lead to crime. We know it. And people are saying we should be funding, social programs. We should be doing those things, but we can't do that, at the jeopardy of the violent crime that not tackling the violent crime that already exists within our community. To me, much of the rhetoric that's out there right now seems to absolve people in our wider community outside of Cleveland for the role that we all play in this. And what I like about this is that by bringing in federal dollars, I'd love to find state dollars. This is a societal fix. This is a systemic fix. This is not a problem that Cleveland can tackle in and of itself and solely through its municipal budget. That's just moving pieces around the chessboard. We need new money. We need our neighbors to participate because we are all in this together, whether we're on one side of an imaginary line in the dirt or another. So to me, this is outside money, new money that allows us to tackle violent crime. And in turn, we should be advocating for new money as well to be funding, social workers, economic investment, all of the other things that lead to crime reduction over time that we're already doing as a council, often outside of our general fund through different grant sources, but we could certainly be doing more of. This is an important first step. I'm supportive of it, but there's so much more advocacy to do, as far as it goes to this general topic of crime in the city of Cleveland. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones, you have taken up your first time. Do you have a 30-second comment and specifically on ordinance number 675-20?
No, Mr. Chairman, I just really appreciate the fact that I think my colleagues really hit it on the nail. And I'm really proud of all of them who had comments. And certainly I support this legislation, Mr. Chairman, 110%.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. If there are no further comments or questions, ordinance number 675-20 stands approved. Ordinance number 690.